Hey guys, Matt here with another video related to not so much HUNDEGNI, although we will talk about that, but mainly we're going to be talking about the Pointing Ninja Z investigation, a particular video that happened towards kind of the end of that investigation called CoMpAsSRoSe. This video has always been it stands out in an odd way compared to everything else in the investigation because unlike a lot of other pieces, it really never led anywhere. It led to a lot of ideas, but it never really led to anything like different. It didn't lead to a different site or like some big clues that we were missing, although it seemed like there were things hidden within it, as we'll talk about in just a second. But before I go any farther at all, I think I'm going to play the video over at least once, and then we're going to go back over and kind of talk about all the things that we've been discussing on our Discord channel, which once again, the link to that is in the description below if you're interested in joining and you're not a part already. So yeah, I'll go ahead and play this over and then we'll talk. Okay, so a little bit of context to a lot of this video because it is, I'd imagine, pretty confusing to someone that really doesn't understand a lot of what happened in the original investigation. But essentially what we're seeing here, as you can kind of see, is an avatar from PlayStation Home, who we believe to be AJ, or as his full name when it was like Ajin Niup, if you were to pronounce it like that. It was the backwards version of Pointing Ninja. He was part of the original investigation team, Eyes in the Sky, and he essentially kind of worked with Arrows of Heaven once the team fell apart and King of the Sun became the first chosen investigator and also became a shadow. And so a special kind of deal was worked out with AJ and AOH, and essentially allowing him the kind of freedom to talk to investigators, give them little hints and pushes, but never like go too far. And his side of it was that he wanted to find out what happened to his friend, King of the Sun. So that's kind of the situation with him, and it's actually a really interesting situation that I've really liked looking into in the past. But essentially, what ended up happening with him was that he realized that home was coming to an end, and so he essentially ended up telling everything to Admiral Thrawn, one of the main investigators of that time. And as such, he was never seen again on PlayStation Home. He was presumably removed, and what we're seeing here is kind of that removal process. We're essentially seeing his avatar in this white blank state, kind of walking and making movements that probably aren't actually him doing it. His account was probably taken over, and his avatar was taken to whatever place or space this is that's tearing him apart, essentially. We've kind of talked with people that use PlayStation Home, and there isn't a space there that would like do this to your avatar naturally. So what you're seeing here is definitely something that like the Suited Man or the Shadows had access to that no one else did, because as we've talked about before, they had special abilities and weird things that they could pull off in PlayStation Home that no one else could. And so you're essentially seeing a real kind of corruption of his avatar, essentially getting worse and worse until he vanishes. So the weird thing about this video, and you might not have noticed it because of just how like poor quality this video is, are the words that are spread throughout it. And I could try to freeze on them, but it's actually kind of hard because of just how difficult they are to see. So I will put up some images really fast of kind of those words that pop up sort of all throughout the video, kind of mainly through the later half, we believe. And as you can see, they're very, very difficult to make out. At the time in the original investigation, when these were looked over, I believe that mainly it was just kind of given up on because of just how difficult they are. You can almost make something out, but just not quite. It's just very difficult. And we'll talk about if we thought that was purposeful or not, or if that was an accident. First of all, I'll just kind of talk about some of the words that we're seeing. The main ones that I'd give credit to right now, we have around 3. One that's "don't be afraid." That's probably the longest phrase that I can kind of see definitely, and we'll kind of go over what those could mean here in just a second. Other people have seen the word "wait," which also sounds like it would be something included in there. And interestingly enough, the word or the phrase "the end," which appears at a later part, which is also kind of, you can see that if you are indeed looking for that. If we are going to go over these phrases, and since these aren't all the words, there are things that we are missing here, so it's very difficult to really give a lot of credence to any of this, but I should mention them nevertheless. So wait is an interesting one. It's probably the most difficult one for me to think of a good explanation for. I'd imagine that it's a part of a bigger sentence, and it's essentially telling the viewer to wait for something to occur in the future, some sort of upload, some sort of event. It could have been foreshadowing the big PN video, which sort of ended the Pointing Ninja of Z investigation until HUNDEGNI came along and kind of messed that up. And "don't be afraid," I'd imagine, would kind of relate to this scene, because it does seem like a scary kind of scene, or just an eerie scene of just watching someone break apart into these pieces, essentially, until they're just nothing. So I think that's just kind of relating to that. I think it's like just a literal kind of thing. And "the end" is really interesting. I could probably come up with a few different reasons that would be on there, quite honestly. But if we are going to talk about the most logical explanation, I really think that it's just talking about this is the end for either this character, for AJ, as he's kind of torn apart, or the end of PlayStation Home, because that was coming up very soon. So it could have been referring to either of those. Obviously, none of these, except for maybe "don't be afraid," are like complete statements, so it's very difficult to tell what the context is. Now, going on to the subject of do we think this was on purpose or not? Because the uploader of this video, as you can kind of tell by the ending here, it definitely seems to be unhinged. That's what it certainly seems like it's trying to get across, is that Unhinged uploaded this video, and that he's trying to give a message. His message earlier being, if I can find that, keep flying. So essentially saying that we need to keep investigating, keep moving forward, or at least talking to the original investigators saying that. And we essentially believe that he shot video of this happening. We're not exactly sure how he got this footage. Maybe like all shadows kind of get access to footage once an avatar is torn apart. I think it's more likely though that this isn't actually AJ being torn apart in like real time, because in actuality his account was probably just gotten rid of. It was probably just taken, and AJ, the real AJ in real life, didn't have access to his account. And so this is all just kind of a recreation of that. It's made to be more dramatic than it really was. I think that's definitely what's going on here. And I think that Unhinged kind of recreated this on his own, or maybe somebody that he knew did. But some sort of combination of that, I think, is what is exactly going on. And as for the words, I've heard a bit of both sides. I've heard people say that they think it was accidental because when you upload videos to YouTube, and it is in this kind of bad quality, and YouTube does kind of change the dimensions of videos a tiny bit. Normally you'd never notice it, but if the words were in the video and they were initially very hard to see, then uploading them to YouTube kind of will make them worse, essentially, is what could be happening here. And so in the original video, the words might have been difficult to see, but like still legible. But now in this worsened state, they become something that's very difficult to fully make out. It's also just as likely, though, that they aren't supposed to be completely read. And as you can see, like, even the title of this video is sort of messed up, and I think that's one of our biggest clues, actually, towards exactly what this video is all about. I think this video is all about, like, that destruction, that kind of loss of quality, that loss of life. Like, the avatar is being torn apart, the words themselves just seem to be torn apart, and the words which appear in the video can hardly be read at all. Some people thought that maybe this was a hint that there was supposed to be a part 2 video, but maybe Unhinged decided not to do that. Like in the part 2, maybe other words would be more visible, and if you kind of placed everything together, meshed them together, you'd end up with more cohesive messages. That's an interesting idea, and I will fully admit that that's possible. There's just no evidence of it necessarily. So both of those theories are really solid, and we probably will never know the right answer since Unhinged has not necessarily reached out to us since then. However, if Unhinged is behind the Mangled channel, which is definitely possible, there's a lot of evidence pointing to that and a lot of evidence that goes against it. A lot of this I'll be talking about when eventually we do a 2.x overview, but we're still waiting on finding the link to 2.5 in order to do that. But if Unhinged is behind that channel, then this video could be a good indicator of what his overall message might be leading towards. So maybe we will find out what the words are in a very, very future 3.x video, or maybe even beyond that. Who knows how long this will go on for. Something I should point out really quick that we found out, and this wasn't found out in the early investigation, so it was really cool for people to come across this, was that we identified the music being used in this video. It's by Bob Bradley. It's called World of Dreams, and it's a really interesting song. I'd recommend that you check it out, but the song as a whole does maintain like a very eerie tone to it. The interesting thing about it, the video or the music, it doesn't have a lot of views to it. It has a fair amount, like it's over 1,000. I don't remember it offhand without looking. But it's definitely not like a super popular video that you just expect like anyone to know about if they typed in like eerie music. It seems like something that's more obscure. So it's interesting that that was utilized and it wasn't just something that was much easier to find. It appears that Unhinged kind of dug around to find this music, which might suggest that it has an important kind of meaning in of itself, particularly with the name World of Dreams. Because really, I mean, this entire video, it does seem like it would be a dream, or more like a nightmare, really. But maybe that's the idea that he's trying to get across, is that this is kind of like a dreamscape that we're seeing before us, which it definitely appears to be. Now going on with why we think that the actual title of the video is CoMpAsSRoSe. This was kind of tough, I think, for anyone to kind of wrap their heads around, because obviously nothing in this video immediately stands out as being a CoMpAsSRoSe, but you have to think about what a CoMpAsSRoSe is. And that is essentially a tool that gives you bearings on what exactly is going on in a map. And as we can see here, this CoMpAsSRoSe, much like the avatar, is being like torn apart. It's in like a disorganized state, and I think that is supposed to indicate here that the CoMpAsSRoSe, or the pointers that are supposed to lead us safely from one point to another, they are now unreliable. They are now broken, potentially beyond repair. And I think that that's an interesting way of getting a message like that across, if that is indeed what that message is supposed to be. And quite honestly, I can't think of a lot of other ways that this would make sense just yet, unless something appears in a future video which might kind of help that along, although that kind of seems unlikely. So as it stands, I'm pretty sure that that's what it's trying to get across, is the fact that this CoMpAsSRoSe, this set of pointers, is now been damaged in some way. So as it stands right now, guys, I believe that is everything that I wanted to cover about the CoMpAsSRoSe video. It was just an interesting thing for us to kind of focus on, since we have to wait a while until the next Mangled upload. And I'm glad that we did, because we did find a lot of interesting stuff about it, and it's cool to go back to things that really weren't looked over like an insane amount in the past, and now like looking at them with more eyes and more opinions. And it's really interesting to just kind of see them again in general. So, and I'm probably forgetting something, because in the Discord chat we had a very long discussion about this video, just talking about a lot of different ideas on like who exactly was posting it, and other things involving like the name and the words that we're seeing and other stuff like that. I couldn't include all of it because some of it does like really conflict, and I'm not sure a lot of them hold water beyond like thinking about them for a few seconds. So if I am forgetting something huge, I'm going to put it in the description as an update. And also remember that the link to the Discord is down there as well. Once again, I would like to thank everybody from the Discord for all their help in finding things from this video, and for just all their general participation in kind of helping out with that. It is really cool. So, so thank you guys so much for that, and until next time, Matt out.